Welcome to Lead with Clarity. This is a space for leaders who want to grow without losing themselves in the process. Each episode is a short reflection on leadership, influence, and the inner work that shapes how we show up for others. It's not hype, it's not noise, just clear thinking for the journey of leading well. Today's episode is entitled The Intent Beneath the Listening. Here we go. There's a skill most leaders believe they already have. They were never formally taught it. They were never evaluated on it, but they're almost universally confident in it. That skill is listening. And in my experience, that confidence is one of the most expensive illusions in leadership. Stephen Covey wrote something that has stayed with me for years. He said, "Most people do not listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply." That's worth sitting with for a moment. Most people, not some people, not struggling communicators, most people. Covey wasn't talking about bad leaders or disengaged employees. He was describing a nearly universal fault, a pattern so embedded in how we communicate that we don't even notice it happening. Think about the last high-stakes conversation you had, a difficult one-on-one, a board discussion, a moment where the stakes were high and emotions were present. Were you fully in it? Or were you partially somewhere else, constructing your response while the other person was still speaking? If you're honest, you probably did both. That's normal. That's human. But for leaders, normal isn't the standard. The standard is what your people need from you. When a team member brings you a problem, they need to feel fully received before they feel redirected. When a peer challenges your position, understanding their logic before defending your own is not a weakness. It's discipline. The leaders I have coached who build the deepest trust are almost never the ones who speak most eloquently. They're the ones who make people feel genuinely heard. Here's where most leaders get this wrong. They interpret listening as a tactic, a technique, something you deploy before you share your perspective. They learn to nod, to maintain eye contact, to not interrupt. And those things are fine, but they're theater if the intent beneath them hasn't changed. The misread is thinking that listening is about behavior. It's not. It's about orientation. If you're fundamentally waiting for your turn, the behavior changes nothing. The person across from you will feel it. They always do. Here's what Covey was actually pointing at. Listening to understand is an act of intellectual humility. It requires you to hold your own conclusions loosely enough that new information can actually move them. That's a difficult ask for accomplished leaders. By the time you reach a certain level, your pattern recognition is sharp. You've heard variations of most problems before. Your instinct is to synthesize quickly and move to solutions. That instinct is an asset in many contexts. In conversation, it's often a liability. Speed of reply is not the same as quality of understanding. And understanding is the prerequisite for everything else. For alignment, for trust, for decisions that actually stick. When you slow down to understand, you're not losing time. You're buying accuracy. Before your next conversation, try one thing. Set an internal rule for yourself. You can't respond until you can articulate back what the other person said in a way they would recognize as accurate. Not a paraphrase you're comfortable with, a reflection that they would confirm. That's the discipline, and it's harder than it sounds. Notice what happens when you hold to it. Notice what you start to hear that you were previously missing. Notice the shift in the room when people realize they're actually being understood. Covey's observation wasn't a criticism of leaders. It was an honest description of the human default. We are wired to respond, to participate, to contribute. That's not a flaw. But leadership requires us to override the default when the moment calls for it. And more often than not, the moment is calling. The most powerful thing you can do in your next conversation may not be what you say. It may be how long you're willing to wait before you say it. Listen to understand. Everything else follows from there.